As previously stated, I'm a big fan of Markiplier's channel. I regularly just flip on a playlist and let it play. One of his older games he played I came across was a game entitled SCP Containment Breach. It was a mildly interesting game, but far more interesting, it led me to the concept of SCP itself. Now, for as long as I've been on the interwebs, it feels like a major oversight to have missed out on the whole SCP thing for so long. Existing as this sort of nifty combination of creepypasta, urban legend, and conspiracy theories. The whole thing deals with the eponymous SCP Foundation's efforts to secure, contain, and protect the world from various entities and artifacts of anomalous qualities. What makes it so interesting is the format of it. Presented as if a series of files within the Foundation. This cold and methodical method boosting the creepy nature of several entries. The SCP referring to both the Foundation motto and each file of special containment procedures. More so is the fact that this is not formed by one person, but rather crowdsourced. Originated in a post on 4chan's paranormal message boards, where a poster detailed the file of an SCP-173, a sentient living concrete statue that had the ability to move when not being observed. The popularity of the SCP format exploded, with others posting their own SCPs, aka skips. Shortly after, the Foundation website followed, and has grown to about 3,000 SCPs and several stories. What I think I like best about it, besides the monsters and madness, is that it's functionally like a more structured creepypasta, much like urban legends before them, where third-person accounts of things and weirdness ruled. Said to have happened to your brother's wife's uncle's neighbor. Creepypasta functioned differently, as if a first-person account, and rarely passed off as real. The SCPs occupy the same space as first-person accounts, but rather than a story, they're files of a secret organization. It's like if the X-Files were, interesting. Speaking of TV connections, you may have noticed a striking similarity between old 173 and a certain popular British sci-fi series that began way back in the 60s. The similarities to Doctor Who's Weeping Angels is striking. Both are stone beings that have a fondness of being zippy when not observed. One shifts you through time, the other snaps your neck. And both debuted in 2007. It's really an odd coincidence. You can find the original air date of the Doctor Who episode Blink, where the Angels debuted. But the post date of the original SCP is not something I could find, though the SCP website claims it was a couple months beforehand. Now, on one hand, I can see a random poster on the internet being inspired by the Weeping Angels to create their own monster. But then, there's also the possibility that Stephen Moffat happened upon this post and used it as inspiration for his creatures. Or it could be just one of those weird moments of synchronicity. But there's a bit more to add. Later on, SCP-055 was introduced. An anti-meme, 055 is an object that is immediately forgotten the moment it's not observed. Sound familiar? The Silents, creatures who are forgotten when not observed, became major antagonists during Stephen Moffat's tenure on Doctor Who. A case of borrowing back and forth? Or just separate inspirations? There's no way to tell for sure. Anywho, anyone talking about SCPs is legally required to formulate a list of some sort. So here's mine. Any discussions about the Foundation must by necessity begin with the originator of the whole thing, SCP-173. But since I mentioned him in the setup, I'll keep it short. It's a really good barometer over whether or not you'd enjoy the whole concept. If nothing else, the fantastically creepy picture and details form a nightmarish creature to enjoy. Digging deeper into SCPs, you find it not only houses wonderful beings of pure nightmare fuel, but also this fascinating, surreal collection of weird and amusing ideas. SCP-055, also previously mentioned, exemplifies this kind of creative writing exercise that many of the better ones are. The very idea of an object that cannot be remembered directly, but by its very nature, one can remember what it is not. Then, whatever this thing may be, it sits firmly on the cusp of leading you into some of the more inventive and amusing SCPs. And what was I talking about? Not just a vehicle for monsters and surreal ideas. SCPs prove quite adept at comedy, of which I, SCP-426, am a perfect example. I mean, I am a fantastically ordinary toaster by most respects. But whenever somebody tries to talk about me or my capabilities, it comes out as a first-person narration. Definitely take a look at my file, if you want to get into some of the odder SCPs like me. If apocalyptic monsters with terrible attitudes is more your speed, SCP-682 is right up your alley. A massive reptilian beast that has thus far seemed unkillable, to the point that one of his necessary containment features is being submerged in acid that continuously eats through his perpetually regenerating flesh. Well, a nifty monster. Where 682 excels is writers' love of tossing him together with other SCPs to see the amusing and unexpected results. One of my favorites has to be SCP-914, a strange mechanical device capable of transforming things into other things, with 4 settings that result in different outcomes, each of which would be fantastically interesting on its own. Rough breaks down the object into its component parts. Coarse transforms it into a lesser version. 1-to-1 switches it with an object of equal stats, with the final setting, Fine, upgrading it into something far superior. The whole thing seems like something straight out of the best kind of Outer Limits tale. Returning to more Ollie notions, we have SCP-586, an object that has the effect of influenza, anyone describing it to make typos. So if you ever wanted an extrapolation for autocorrect, there you have it. This little doodad is the perfect excuse for all your errors and habitual misspellings. Well, 173 is a tale of facing your fears. SCP-096 shows that to be a very bad idea. A spindly humanoid being that absolutely wigs the fuck out whenever someone views it or even an image of it. After doing so, 096 will proceed to hunt that individual down and slaughter them. And apparently do things far worse. Once activated, nothing can impede it. And nothing remains of the victims in the end. So basically, look at the monster, don't look at the monster. You're just screwed. I do believe one of my favorites has to be SCP-2000. A last-ditch procedure that is designed to renew the human race in the event of an extinction-level event. I just love the bizarrely huge implications behind this one. And how the details bring it to life, especially the implication that it's been used previously. And thus we come to the existential horror entry. SCP-2718, a long and involved entry that takes on a bit of a different style than the others. It seeks to answer one of the most obvious concepts that most SCPs end at. What happens after death? If you've seen the Tales from the Crypt episode, You Murderer, you get the idea it begins at, but goes way, way further down the rabbit hole. And I love it for it. Sitting squarely in the realm between absurdly amusing and utterly creepy horror is SCP-1048, a living teddy bear that at first seems benign. But as the entry goes on and it begins to replicate itself, things just get creepier and creepier. Never, never trust living toys. Ever. And then we come to the last, but certainly not least, of the entries on the list. SCP-2521, which, as you begin to decipher the pictograms on the page, you begin to realize that... And that's the sick thing here. Well, every statement is aimed at how sick and twisted these demonic pirates ruining your shows and movies are. These are oftentimes your fans. People who don't want to miss an episode. People looking to get into the series and needing to catch up. These are the same people who will run out fancy that came to them. Enhanced by the style of not being hosted and narrated, as if somebody telling you a story of other people, but rather told as if this person is sitting across from you, imparting some bizarre event that happened in their life. It has this very ethereal sense of out of place and time quality to it.